third quarter goes down. At least they called this one. A'ja Wilson creams Lexi Hull like she did 5 times in game 1. Peggy Hammock get 15 calls in a row and one goes another way and she starts screaming and crying. A'ja Wilson doesn't like Lexi Hull. She's always pushing her, but that's an illegal screen, and then Lexi Hull gets called for a foul.
Wow, this is unbelievable. The Indiana Fever just let game 2 slip away, and honestly, it wasn't because the Aces outperformed them. No, the refs practically gifted that game to Las Vegas. Think about it. 41 fouls in total, with 16 coming in a single quarter. Players were getting thrown to the floor left and right. And here's the kicker. Somehow A'ja Wilson gets praised for her stats, while Lexi Hull is grinding through a back injury she picked up in game 1. That wasn't basketball, folks. It was pure chaos masquerading as defense. So, the real question is, how did the Fever even find a way to fight through all of that? And what does this absolutely brutal matchup mean as they head back to Indiana? Show your love for the Fever right now by commenting. Let's go, Lexi. Let's go.
I mean, it feels like a physical game every game. Feels like it's been a physical season. But yes, I think, I feel like I've been on the ground a little bit more this series so far. But we just keep getting back up, so that's all you can really say.
Seriously, how did Indiana walk into Las Vegas, face the 2-time defending champs, deal with whistles that were already leaning the wrong way, and still walk out with a double-digit win? Game 1 wasn't just an ordinary victory. It sent a shockwave across the entire league. The Fever approached that opener with a calm, almost icy discipline, something you rarely witness from such a young squad. And right from the start, Kelsey Mitchell erased every single doubt by torching the scoreboard for a playoff career-high 34 points. Each time Vegas tried to turn up the pressure, Indiana responded instantly, not with flashy highlights, but with pure, calculated control, refusing to ever let the tempo slip from their grasp.
Take that. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's one. That's one. That's one. Yeah. They ain't song and dance to me, man. I'm just crazy, man. I love basketball. I love playing with my team. So let's take what we do.
And then came the Aces' so-called trump card, A'ja Wilson, the reigning MVP. Instead of dominating, she walked straight into a nightmare of a shooting night. Just 6 makes on 22 attempts. Indiana's defense was absolutely suffocating. They forced her into contested shots, challenged everything at the rim, and made sure every single bucket had to be earned. That, my friends, was the true story. One team executing with surgical precision, barely committing fouls, while the so-called powerhouse couldn't even find a rhythm on their own home floor.
A'ja Wilson, look at that foul they called for her. Yeah, saved her. That's some bullcrap. I love Aaliyah Boston. Great job today playing defense. Look at that. Another foul. Bailed out by the refs. I get pissed off. This is the worst one. They call this a jump ball. How is that a jump ball? Nobody even had possession. Aaliyah Boston, that's anything is over the back. Not a
But what made it sting even more for Vegas was the context. They were on their own floor, with the whistle already tilting ever so slightly in their favor, and national coverage practically scripting an easy series win. Instead, the Fever stood tall and walked out with a commanding 16-point blowout. Fans immediately started spotting the cracks. The foul count didn't sit right, even in victory. Yet the sheer dominance of Indiana's performance buried those complaints. Still, that quiet undercurrent of bias wasn't forgotten. It was merely brushed aside, because at the end of the day, the Fever got the job done, no matter the circumstances.
And A'ja Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces lose Game 1 on their home court to the Indiana Fever, 89-73. The Indiana Fever were in control of this game from start to...
That embarrassment, you see, lit a fire under the Aces. A 16-point loss wasn't something they could just brush off, and it's exactly why they stormed into Game 2 determined to flip the script. The question was never if Vegas would respond. We all knew they would. The real question was, how far would they go? And here's the kicker. At what cost did the Aces choose to fight back? Was Game 2 even basketball, or was it simply a brutal brawl that the referees dressed up as playoff intensity? From the opening minutes, it became crystal clear the Aces had no interest in keeping things clean.
In the WNBA, you cannot blindside somebody and set a screen on them without enough time for letting the player being screened react. And then look at this. This one, their arms lock up, but you gotta let go at some point. Like, you can't bring the person closer to you and just stay locked in while the offensive player is trying to get the rebound. But we know A'ja Wilson only receives foul.
In the WNBA, you can't just blindside someone with a screen without giving them time to react. And then look at this. On one play, their arms lock up, but at some point you have to let go. You can't just pull the opponent closer and stay tangled while the offensive player is fighting for a rebound. Yet somehow, A'ja Wilson only seems to draw fouls, never commit them. From the jump, Vegas came out throwing arms, with bodies colliding on nearly every possession. And the worst part? The officials never established control. What should have been an incredible back-and-forth showcase between two elite teams instead dissolved into chaos. 41 fouls, the whistle slicing through the arena nonstop. 16 of those fouls came in the third quarter alone, a stretch where Indiana had no chance to build rhythm. Every spark of momentum was chopped to pieces by stoppages that, let's be real, seemed to consistently tilt in one direction.
Steph, why don't you think you were able to find any flow? And when that was the case, what are you trying to do to jumpstart things, maybe on the defense?
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us.
This physicality wasn't just an occasional flare-up. It became the entire storyline of the game. Players were being shoved relentlessly while trying to cut through the lane. Defenders leaned on forearms instead of using proper footwork, and more than once, someone ended up sprawled across the floor. What really stood out wasn't only the sheer volume of fouls, but the way they systematically shredded the Fever's pace. This is a team that thrives in rhythm, loves to run, and shares the ball freely. Instead, they were dragged into a bruising wrestling match they never asked for. And while Vegas piled up free throws, Indiana was forced into choppy half-court sets, the part of the game that least fits their true identity.
Yeah, Lexi, obviously you were a late add to the injury report today. Just how are you feeling this morning with your back, and what do you have to do to be able to play?
I mean, I'm feeling sore still, but I think just a lot of treatment, trying to get, our bodies as ready as we can be. Part of playoffs, I think, for everyone is it's the end of the season. Everyone's a little fatigued, everyone's a little sore. So just trying to go out there and do the best I can. Yeah, a lot of treatment with our trainers. I'm really thankful for them to spend a lot of time with me today, a lot of time with me yesterday, getting me ready for it.
Let's be honest, Lexi Hull should never have even been on the floor. After injuring her back in Game 1, she was literally listed as a game-time decision. Most players would have sat out, healed up, and waited for the series to shift back home. But not Hull. She taped herself up, stepped onto the court, and immediately became a target of Vegas's rough-and-tumble style. You could see it in real time, hit after hit, bump after bump, with her crashing onto the hardwood more than once. And yet, through all of that, Hull rose to the arc and buried 5 three-pointers, tying a Fever playoff record. It wasn't clean. It wasn't pretty. But it was pure defiance. After the game, she admitted, "I'm feeling sore still, but I think just a lot of treatment, trying to get our bodies as ready as we can be. We're just pushing through." That's not some highlight reel quote. That's the voice of a player who knows she's being punished, but flat out refuses to fold.
This is what happened. They cut it to 8 and they get 4 fouls in a row. That was not a foul. That was not a foul. This is crazy. 4 consecutive fouls. So from 8, it goes to 13 really quick, and the rest was history. It looks like Howard got hit in the arm by 2 players. They don't call foul. It was a shot clock. But the rest of the game were just a whole bunch of fouls being called.
And get this, while all of this was happening, the national conversation barely mentioned Hull's unbelievable grit or the Fever fighting tooth and nail to keep their season alive. Instead, the spotlight went straight to A'ja Wilson's stat line: 25 points, 9 rebounds, 5 steals, 2 blocks. Those numbers were plastered everywhere. But what got completely ignored was how she racked them up, bulldozing her way into the paint, knocking players around, and cashing in on calls that Indiana never seemed to receive on the other end. Fans watching saw it. They called it out. Yet the headlines still painted her night as dominant. Let me be clear. Dominant isn't the same thing as fair, not when half the opposing starters are limping off the court.
Yeah, I mean, it's how you look at it. It looks, honestly, by some of the fouls and the way it was going, it looks like we were almost too physical, but yet at the same time, I feel like we have to be able to get that on the other end. I think, sometimes when you just look at the game as a whole, when you look at the way that it works, sometimes you manipulate it to different ways and you have smaller matchups. So, I mean, I just don't think it's really possible all the time for some of those smaller matchups to really do such a clean job of that. But hey, I'm here to hoop, so none of my business.
And then there was Aaliyah Boston, living that brutal reality possession after possession. She finished with 10 points and 13 rebounds, but honestly, it felt like every single one came at the cost of a shot to the ribs or a shove in the back. Paint touches that should have been automatic trips to the free throw line instead turned into no calls. What people sometimes forget is that Boston is only in her 3rd season, yet she's already carrying herself like a seasoned veteran. Against the Aces, she wasn't given an inch, and instead of complaining, she simply battled for every board. On paper, her box score looked steady, but in truth, those numbers were the product of pure survival basketball.
Hull kept her out of that space as much as she would have wanted to. She did end up with 19 points.
7-0. Aces run has been stopped. Sims.
And here's where things get interesting. While the spotlight was supposed to shine on the big-name stars, it was Odyssey Sims who actually gave Indiana room to breathe. She poured in 18 points, constantly battling through double teams, swipes at her arms, and whistles that killed any rhythm she managed to create. Sims was taking half-broken possessions and turning them into buckets, only to watch the very next trip wiped out by yet another stoppage. You could see the frustration building in real time, but she never backed down. For every push Vegas delivered, Sims answered with buckets of her own.
There's foul on Young. Sims over. A'ja Wilson, she had to put some extra.
The real story of Game 2 isn't that Indiana failed. It's that they weren't truly allowed to play their game. The grit was there in full. Hull's clutch threes, Boston's relentless boards, Sims's fearless drives. But every single surge was stomped out by either a whistle or a brutal shove. The Aces didn't expose flaws in strategy. No, they leaned on foul-heavy chaos and rode it straight to victory. If you're wondering how the Fever lost, the answer isn't about who played better. It's painfully clear that without constant interruptions, Indiana's poised shooting could have swung the outcome. But this leads to the bigger question. If Las Vegas needed both the whistles and brute physicality, what actually changed in their tactics to shut Kelsey Mitchell down? Remember, in Game 1, Mitchell torched the Aces for 34 points, scoring in every way imaginable, catch and shoot, off the dribble, attacking the rim. But by Game 2, she was completely smothered. Her total plummeted to just 13. And it wasn't because she suddenly forgot how to score. No, Las Vegas came in with one ruthless objective: squeeze Mitchell until she had no space left to operate. That, my friends, was the other crucial half of what made Game 2 so different.
Step on that note with Kelsey just having a little bit of a, they were able to contain her a little bit more. How did you feel like they were able to be successful in that regard?
I mean, the physicality won. She's like a little pinball, I know that the museum's right down the street, so sometimes I feel like she's getting pinged around.
They threw extra bodies at her constantly, sometimes even face guarding when she didn't have the ball. Every cut left a bruise, Every screen set for her was met with a punishing, physical hedge. That's what fundamentally disrupted the Fever's entire rhythm. Instead of letting Mitchell dictate the pace and stretch the defense, Las Vegas forced the ball into other hands. Double teams funneled her passes into crowded lanes, and by the time she finally shook free for a clean look, it was usually deep in the shot clock. Credit where it's due. It was a smart, disciplined defensive adjustment. No doubt about it. But let's be real. It looked a whole lot cleaner on film than it felt in the heat of the game.